Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What a great pleasure it is to be here at this Tomorrow's Rail event. Now, I'm going to be speaking today about digital railway. Now, my new boss, Sir Peter Hendy, is famously quoted recently in one of the newspapers, and he said, Mark Carne, he said he's a nice bloke, and he's got this idea about the digital railway and how it's going to transform the capacity of our railways over the next 15 to 20 years. But nobody's listening because he can't fix London Bridge. Now, the reality is that Peter was absolutely right to make those comments, because it's all very well to have a great view about how we can transform the railway in the future. But if you don't deliver today operational performance every single day to customers and give them what they deserve and what they want, honestly, they aren't really interested in your long-term views for the future, and neither are the politicians. So I'm unashamedly going to start a little bit today by saying, what are we doing in Network Rail to tackle the challenges that we have on our railway today? Because they are enormous. Really some very tough challenges that we have to fix today, and that we are getting after, and that we are going to fix. And this is part of the challenge that we have. An incredibly popular railway today. But if we don't deliver the service that people want, then of course we get an incredible amount of attention, because what we do really matters. What we do really makes a difference to the lives of 4.5 million people every day. And if you don't deliver that service every day, then of course you quite rightly get the kinds of attention that we get. But some of the things that we ought to never lose sight of as well, we do some extraordinary things in our industry, as Pete has already highlighted. And just to highlight some of the things that we're doing at the moment, which are quite amazing. You know, we do have the safest passenger railway in Europe. And we haven't always been able to say that by any means. It's been a hard-won battle of technological change and improvements over the last decade, or the last 15 years or so. And it's something that I'm very proud of and determined that we continue to achieve. We now have more people travelling than probably ever before, actually. And we have this enormous investment programme that we're now catching up on the investment that the railway needs in this country. After really decades, you might even say 100 years of underinvestment in our railways. And we have this incredible program of regeneration, not just of stations, and you can look at, we're going to be opening Manchester Victoria, Birmingham New Street in the very near future. We've done King's Cross and Pancras. We're doing London Bridge, Blackfriars, incredible stations. But some of these stations also lead to complete redevelopment of city centres, and perhaps King's Cross is the best example of that. We're going to be opening later this year the first new railway to be built, domestic railway to be built in this country for 100 years in Scotland. And that's very, I think, very exciting. And of course, we continue to see the growth in freight and the opportunity that creates to take freight off the road and relieve the congestion on our roads. So there's a huge amount for us to be proud of. But we face some big challenges. And this graph really highlights what passengers experience. So the red line is the passenger performance measure, the reliability of the service as experienced by passengers over the last 20 years or so, since privatisation. And the big dip is after the big train crashes that we had, the Hatfield-Potters Bar train crashes in 2000, and the speed restrictions that were placed on the network then, and then a decade of improving reliability. And the grey lines, the grey bars, are the numbers of passengers. So the doubling of the number of passengers over this period. But what's really striking about this picture is that in the last 5 years, actually, passenger experience has been gradually declining. So this isn't just something that's happened today. This is something that's been actually, occurring over a number of years. Basically, the network is not able to improve fast enough to handle the extra numbers of passengers that we see coming onto the network. And we need to do something different if we're going to tackle this problem. So what people perhaps don't know is that the railway today is actually the most reliable that it has ever been. So the number of failures that occur on the railway is the lowest that it has ever been. That doesn't immediately translate into improved passenger experience and reliability because with the increasing numbers of passengers, the knock-on effects of one delay can become really significant. And the little map on the right-hand side shows 12 hours after a train failure in Hereford, the coloured dots represent the numbers and severity of train delays on the network as a whole. And what this really highlights is that we have a network, a UK-wide network, and which we have to operate as a network, and single failures can have a huge knock-on effect right across the network. Now, how are we going to tackle these challenges? Well, firstly, let me just talk organisationally. There's a lot of talk about devolution and about the role that might play in the running of our network. Well, let me confront that head on. We are splitting up Network Rail into 8 devolved routes. That's the way we are running Network Rail today, and we are continuing to push in that direction. I want to have Network Rail as a company made up of 8, if you like, sort of regional companies or route-based companies, where decisions are taken locally as much as possible, where they're focused on the needs of the local passengers, the local councils, the local regions, and where they're targeted on supplying services to particular train operating companies. But we have to do that within a framework, a national framework. It is still a national network. And so where I can gain economies of scale on a national level, for example, in procurement or in IT, of course I will want to do that. And of course I will also want to ensure that we have national standards for the railway as a whole, that we manage the timetable on a national basis, because it's a national network, that we plan the developments on a national basis as well. So it's trying to get the best of both worlds, regional performance-orientated companies driving that excellence within a national framework of standards and economies of scale. But within this devolved model within Network Rail, we also have to fundamentally change some of the culture that we have within the company. You know, as a big monopoly company, sometimes you don't have that spirit of competition that most companies have. If you don't perform today, somebody else will take your business. So how do you create that competitive spirit to just relentlessly be better every single day? That's what we have to be in Network Rail, better every day. And we are really adopting the sort of lean principles now that were championed in the car plants. You know, you see a 1970s car plant here on the left and now a modern Volkswagen plant in Germany. We are on this same sort of journey in terms of the way we work, but we're a lot nearer the left than we are the right. And we need to modernize the way we work, modernize our work practices so that we can really drive performance forward. And for those of you who say, well, this is all sort of manufacturing stuff and it doesn't work in our railway industry, and some people have said that to me, I would argue that you're not right. This is an example from one of our routes, the London North East and East Midlands route, and you can see it this is for a number of years, and for about 3 or 4 years, this is the number of delay incidents, so the incidents causing a delay, and we sort of plateaued over a number of years. And we introduced lean and continuous improvement about 3 years ago, and we're starting to really see the benefits. And now, every period, we're seeing the lowest numbers of delay incidents, and we're driving it down period by period by period. So this sort of approach to the way we're trying to run our business every day is an essential prerequisite to any conversation you have about the future of our railway. We have to do a better job of driving performance today, and we are relentlessly determined to do so. And we've got great people. You know, we have got fantastic people in our company, and with the right leadership and the right determination, I can tell you we are going to really see the benefits. But the challenges that we face going forward are also huge. I've already explained that, if you like, our network is in many places is full to bursting. And anybody who commutes into London or into Manchester or many of our big urban centres knows how crowded our trains are. And yet, in the next few years, you know, in the next 20 years, we expect the numbers of passengers to double again. And we're going to see also a huge increase in freight in the next 10 years as more and more companies choose to use the reliability of freight as opposed to the challenges of our more and more congested road network. So I think we've got to, when we think about how we're going to tackle these challenges, we have to look at the growth of regions, the growth of cities, the growth in the numbers of passengers, and the passenger choices about moving to rail. Now, of course, part of the solution to this challenge is to build new railways or to electrify railways and improve the speed of the trains and the comfort of the trains and the reliability of the trains. And we have this enormous investment program that we're undertaking in CP5. And I'm sure there may be some questions later on about our spending plans, and I'll be more than happy to address those when we come to the Q&A. But we have got an amazing program of investment on electrification on a number of projects across the network. And of course, we have HS2 coming down the tracks as well as Crossrail and Thameslink and so on. So there is big investment on improving the existing network. But you know, these sorts of projects have enormous challenges. They're really difficult to do. Trust me, anybody who's been to London Bridge and seen the challenges of rebuilding the fourth busiest railway station in Britain completely from the bottom up, relaying all the tracks at the same time as providing a service to 35,000 commuters every single day, it's a massively difficult thing to do. It's massively difficult because, of course, we can only work for a few hours every day in the middle of the night. And when we finish every single day, the railway has to work. You can't just say, well, we'll come back tomorrow and we'll finish. It has to you has to be working every single day when you finish. Expanding our network, laying more railway lines. How are we going to increase the capacity from into Waterloo? Well, one option is a fifth railway track from Surbiton to Waterloo. What is the cost of the land that we would have to acquire to do that? The inconvenience to our line-side neighbours, and so on. Of course, we have real challenges around our supply chain with the huge investment that's being made, not just in our network, but in HS2 as well. And there is definitely a skills gap, and you'll hear about this today. Huge numbers of railway engineers moving to other parts of the world as railway projects blossom and grow elsewhere. I had breakfast with Howard Collins this morning, and he was telling me about the number of Network Rail people working in Sydney. Actually, I know that there are 900 ex-Network Rail engineers working outside the country in the Middle East and Australia and in America. It's a huge challenge that we have today to rebuild the skills that we need to tackle the problems that we have. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, when you rebuild or try to extend the capacity of existing railways by building new railways alongside, you will have passenger disruption. And I think sometimes we've not been straight enough with the public about that. We've not been straight enough. We've kind of almost pretended that we can do this incredible rebuilding job and they'll never know. It's just not going to be like that. There is going to be disruption sometimes. And it's going to be disruption over a number of years, but then you will have decades of improved service. And of course, whenever you do open heart surgery on on a brownfield site, you never quite know what you're going to find. And we find some pretty strange things when we've opened up some of the old stations, and from asbestos to, dormice and all sorts of things that really create the sorts of challenges that we have on brownfield sites. So I would argue that, of course, laying more railways and improving the existing railways is part of the answer, but we need to do something a lot smarter with the existing infrastructure than that. And that's where the digital railway comes in. And anybody who's worked on the tube, and you know what the difference that digital signalling can make in terms of capacity. This is just an example from another industry. Topical today, this is Heathrow. This is the number of flights that were landing in Heathrow over the last 20 years or so. It reached a plateau, and then suddenly a step change in the number of flights with digital air traffic control. Plateaus again, hence we need another runway now. But 60% increase in capacity just through digital control of flights. So what can we do with a digital railway? That's the real prize that we need to have a vision for, a clear vision for, and get after. Because we're only going to meet, I believe, the huge demands on our railway if we really fundamentally change the way we control the position of trains on our track. So digital train control is just fundamental. Moving to an ETCS system is going to be absolutely critical. It will allow us to run many more trains. In our most densely populated urban centres, we're talking about up to 40% and maybe more trains on an existing network. No more tracks, just 40% more capacity. So very significant. You can run faster trains and more reliable trains. About 30% of the delays to our network, the infrastructure failures today are caused by signalling and signalling-related failures. So significantly more reliable. Safer. 80% of all signals passed at danger are caused by driver inattention or not seeing the signals. So these are really significant benefits that we can get through digital train control. But it's not just about these factors. It's also about how else we can leverage greater capacity from our existing workforce. We can work so much safer in our industry by harnessing digital technology and digital information in smarter ways. Why do we send people out to go and inspect stuff that we can do so much better using better technology today, whether it be through drones or remote control sensing or with smart trains? Making sure that we have intelligent information about the quality of our assets will allow us to intervene long before a failure actually occurs, giving a more reliable and better service to our customers. So I think the digital railway is much more than just about digital train control. It's also about fundamentally changing our relationship with our assets and thinking differently about how we can monitor and control and deliver those assets. But actually, all of this is only for one thing, and it is about the passenger. It's about the customer. How do we become so much more customer-focused, giving the customers what they really want, which is a seamless journey experience tailored to their needs, so that they feel that it's all about them rather than about us, and they're kind of sometimes a bit of an inconvenience. So using digital technology in completely different ways to change the way in which customers experience our railway, from the ticketing, from the information, from the passenger information during disruption to the Wi-Fi. Kirsty and I were just talking about Wi-Fi on trains and about how you can't make telephone calls on trains in the 21st century. These are the things we have to get after and change. Now, if you take just signalling technology, our current approach to ETCS is that it is a signalling replacement project. When the old signalling dies, we replace it with ETCS. So you end up with a fragmented rollout across the network. You invest hugely in the trains, but the network, you never get the benefit of it. And in fact, our network is not ETCS enabled until 2062. I'll be 103. Now, I don't know about you, but that can't be right. That's not the right answer, is it? It's not the right answer. So the challenge that I've set the team is to say, well, look, what would it take to actually have a digital railway by 2029? Don't tell me it can't be done. Tell me why it can't be done. When we know what those barriers are, when we know what those hurdles are, we can overcome them. And I think as an industry, we need to be far more determined, far more aggressive about tackling some of these challenges, because the prize here is absolutely huge, and I think it's essential for our country. Now, I'd like to just close with some good news, actually. And it's good news for Network Rail, and I think it's good news for our railway as a whole. I mentioned earlier on that 900 of our Network Rail staff now work overseas for other people. But we have now created, over the last 2 years, Network Rail Consulting, so that we retain those expertise within our broader Network Rail community. And we provide now services to Australia, to Saudi Arabia, and I'm very pleased to announce today that we've just been awarded a significant contract to support the high-speed development of railways in the United States, in California. So in just 2.5 years, we've won more than £100 million worth of work in Network Rail Consulting, which actually just goes to show how valued British rail experience is in the global rail market. We can be a global leader in rail again. We can grasp the opportunity from digital railway, and I thoroughly recommend it to the House. Thank you very much indeed.